Good evening. Wales, along with the UK as a whole, has voted to leave the European Union. The result has been welcomed by Leave campaigners, describing it as a historic moment. But First Minister Carwyn Jones says he fears there'll be consequences for jobs and can't see anything positive to come out of a Brexit. Just over 52% of voters in Wales backed Leave, compared with 47% supporting Remain. Out of the 22 Welsh council areas, a total of 17 voted to leave the EU, 5 voted for Remain: Cardiff, Ceredigion, Monmouthshire, the Vale of Glamorgan and Gwynedd. Turnout was high in Wales at nearly 72%. Our political editor Nick Savini reports now on how Wales voted.
Remember this day is British Independence Day, and please...
They don't look like much out in the rain on the streets of Newport, but more than 850,000 people across Wales backed the cause promoted by these Vote Leave campaigners. Even for some diehards it came as a surprise, but for many here it was the result of years of work.
Last night, Wales voted for us to leave the EU. I mean, that's just a fantastic result. It wasn't just England pulling the rest of Britain out of Europe, out of the EU. It was England and Wales.
And as we've seen throughout the campaign, their message touched a nerve with some passers-by.
There was always a sense of the band of brothers taking on the establishment with the Vote Leave campaign, and it generated excitement and enthusiasm that, frankly, the other side failed to match. They just could not make their greater size count, and when they did start campaigning, they were too late to the party.
The most prominent Vote Leave campaigner in Wales was the leader of the Welsh Conservatives, Andrew R.T. Davies. He says he was proud to play his part.
The beliefs and aspirations of what we were seeking to achieve were magnified last night by the vote, and the substantial vote, to recast our relationship with Europe. And I believe my team stuck to their convictions, stuck loyally with me, and we have succeeded with the family of activists that were in the Leave campaign.
Their jubilation was in stark contrast to a downbeat news conference in Cardiff, in which Carwyn Jones warned of job losses. He also refused to take responsibility for the result in Wales, saying he did not choose the timing of the referendum. But he admitted there was a disconnect between Labour leaders and their heartland areas.
Too many people in these communities feel that politics and our economy has left them behind, and we have a real task ahead to undo that sense of alienation.
There was also a call for stability from the leader of Plaid Cymru, Leanne Wood.
In the next phase now, the chances are it could be even more difficult unless we are prepared to pull together as politicians and as civic society in Wales to make sure that our needs are fully understood by Westminster and delivered upon.
The result in Wales mirrored that in England. Cardiff chose to remain with the biggest majority, together with affluent areas like the Vale of Glamorgan and Monmouthshire, and the Welsh-speaking heartlands of Ceredigion and Gwynedd. In Gwynedd, the vote split 58-42. Plaid Cymru, which is strong here, had urged its supporters to vote Remain. With its university and large hospital, Bangor's population is diverse. The city's Pontio Arts Complex was built using EU cash. There, its executive director, Dewi Hughes, says the future is now uncertain.
It would be a great shame, obviously, if those opportunities are not available to these kinds of areas in the future. So, again, I hope that in whatever new settlement comes, there will be the opportunities to obtain that kind of funding for economically disadvantaged areas.
But it was a very different story in Blaenau Gwent, the most Eurosceptic area, voting by 62-38 to leave. It was one of many former industrial communities in the Labour heartland in the South Wales valleys to reject Remain, despite receiving millions in EU funding.
I think people are trying to take control back from the government, really.
I think, basically, to get our country back owned by ourselves and governed by ourselves.
I think that there's too many immigrants coming into our country and taking our jobs, you know.
For many years, Wales was considered one of the most pro-EU places in the UK. Not anymore.
Nick, what's your assessment of the result?
Well, Lucy, I would argue that the symbolic significance of a Brexit in Wales is as important here as it is anywhere else in the UK. You've got to remember, after the demise of heavy industry in particular, the EU played a major role. Grants to deprived communities, the single market was central to inward investment, major economic policies for decades in Wales. And yet what's fascinating is that it's been rejected most strongly in the communities, on paper at least, that were supposed to have benefited the most. So why is that? Now, the Brexit campaigners will tell you that they've been successful in arguing the case that it's important to regain control. But as you know, I've been out on the campaign for weeks now, and people have told me they've been voting Leave for all sorts of reasons. Sure, they want to take back control, but they want to kick Cameron, they want to kick Jeremy Corbyn, they want to kick the bankers. And in the middle of all of this, the subject of immigration has almost dominated, despite the fact that in some of these communities, migration is no higher than 3% of the population. But that's not the point. The point is the fear of immigration is there, and that's why so many people voted to leave.
So what does this mean now for the political parties in Wales?
Well, Labour in particular were always going to do the heavy lifting on this. Big questions tonight about the role of Welsh Labour, and I know we had an Assembly campaign, but why was it that they were so late out campaigning? By the time they got out there, a momentum against the EU had generated speed, and it was impossible to stop when it got going.
Our political editor, Nick Savini, thank you.